Hello, this is Hilary Robertson. Welcome to the latest episode of Harmonious World, and I'm beyond delighted to be joined this time by sax player Ernie Watts. The track I'm opening with this time is his Horizon. Ernie has played with just about everybody, and I guarantee you've heard his sound before. His discography reads like a who's who of 20th century and 21st century music. Lee Ritenour, Quincy Jones, George Duke, Marvin Gaye, Bill Withers, Cannonball Adderley, Frank Zappa. He has won awards around the world and he's still playing with his quartet, or was before lockdown. And there is something of the Coltrane about him. Watts is best known possibly for performing with Buddy Rich and also with Pat Metheny, but with Oliver Nelson and Thelonious Monk. He's done Motown with Aretha Franklin and Steely Dan. He described his ongoing journey as, "I see music as the common bond, having potential to bring all people together in peace and harmony. All things in the physical world have vibration. The music I choose to play is the energy vibration that touches a common bond in people. I believe that music is God singing through us, an energy to be used for good." I hope you enjoy our conversation as much as I did.
Oh, hi.
I have to say, I am genuinely in awe of your musicianship, your vast catalogue, the people you've played with, everything. I'm a little bit starstruck.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
And the new stuff is just beautiful.
Yeah, those are from our company that we started, Patricia and I. Yeah, we've been doing that for a while, since 2004.
So you've really taken control.
Well, at a certain point you have to. You know, you have to create an environment where you can be who you are rather than what somebody else thinks you should be.
Right.
So that's where we've come to.
Right. But even before that, I mean, your playing, it comes from your heart, doesn't it?
Yes, always, because that's what music is. Music is spirit coming through you. So for whatever reason, I was always in touch with that. There was always something in me that responded to that.
Yeah. I mean, thank the Lord you were given that first Miles Davis album.
Yeah, that's it. Kind of Blue. That was the one that was my first album, and that was the first one I heard John Coltrane on.
He was just extraordinary. And actually, in preparing for this interview, I listened to your version of Crescent, and then I went back to his.
Right.
And they're very different, but they're just both amazing. So let's start with talking about that.
Okay.
Tell me about how you reimagined that track.
Well, we all have our own voice, I mean, I realized pretty early on that nobody else can sound like anybody else. So it's impossible for me to be John Coltrane. John Coltrane was. But the compositions that he wrote were so applicable to the values and the feelings that I had. So basically, it's just my concept of his tune or my imagination of what his imagination was, you know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
all of those tunes are open to your personal emotional interpretation, and that's the way it should be. That's what jazz is, you know. It's our individual voice, it's our individual interpretation of the composer's material.
But why did that one come onto this album?
Well, it was just something that I always wanted to play. I really liked that composition, Crescent. I really loved Lonnie's Lament and those different compositions of Coltrane's that were very open and melodic in relationship to being able to transmit that kind of energy, you know, in a melodic way, in that modal way, dealing with scales and harmonies in that way rather than individual chords, you know, bringing all the sounds together. And I think that's what we all learned from Coltrane, was how to bring together these basic elements of music into a really creative, emotional event.
Now, in editing this conversation, that seems like a sensible place to play Ernie Watts and his quartet performing Crescent. Sadly, I can't play you all of that track, but that is Crescent, taken from Oasis, Ernie Watts' 2011 album. And now we're going to go back to the conversation. I once visited the John Coltrane's house in Philadelphia, and a long time ago. And it was his cousin, I think, who was sort of showing us around. It was a fairly informal tour. And she said that when he used to practice, he never practiced tune, you know, like melodies. It was always scales.
Right, scales and chord patterns and sequentials and triads and that kind of thing, because those were the basics of his vocabulary.
Yeah. It feels like you have played with so many people who are inspirational. So presumably you never actually played with Train.
I never played with him. When I was at Boston, when I was at the Berklee School of Music, he would come to the jazz workshop, which was about 3 blocks from the school, and I'd go and I'd listen to him every night. But I was totally mystified by him, and Miles Davis too. I was afraid of them. You know, they were so larger than life to me that I really didn't know how to approach them. You know, it was like I just felt totally in awe. So that's when I met McCoy. And I would go and I'd sit on the breaks and I'd talk with McCoy and we'd talk about these things and stuff. But I never could get it together to introduce myself to John Coltrane or Miles Davis. And I've seen both of them play.
That to me is really extraordinary to have just been in the room to hear them playing.
Well, it's an incredible energy, you know. all of that music was, I call it energy music. You know, it's really it's really very, very strong and very, very direct.
Yeah, and Miles, sort of more than Coltrane, played lots of, you know, he played with lots of different kind of people and different styles, and I have the sense that if he'd carried on, he would have done more with pop and you know, I mean, you've done stuff with Motown artists, of course.
Well, yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, so
I think Miles was going that way because he wanted the money. You know, it was Miles was in the music business. You know, Coltrane, that was he didn't even think about that. You know, he was into music. That's why I tell people that an artist, what usually happens with an artist is they get successful doing a particular thing, and after they get successful doing that, they just keep doing that for as long as their whole career, 40 years, 30 years. They play the same stuff over and over and over and over again because that's what made them famous, right?
right.
Coltrane, the thing about Coltrane was he never stopped. He never stopped practicing. He never stopped growing. He never stopped evolving. Now, that was a positive thing. The negative thing was that he left his audience in the dust. You know, if you were not involved in that music, if you were not studying that music and knew something and wanted to know something and wanted to open your mind, he just left everybody in the dust. Coltrane was not entertainment. You know, it was enlightenment. It was uplifting. It was a spiritual awakening. And if you weren't ready for that, you couldn't hear that. You know, there's a thing about consciousness, there's a thing about awareness, which is if you are not ready to receive information, you don't get it. And you could be standing right there in the room next to him and not know what it was. It would just sound like noise, you know.
Yeah, yeah, and I think people who don't get jazz listen to Coltrane and they are, as you say, left in the dust. They have
They're
no.
unless they listen to the ballads album, unless they listen to the blues stuff. You know, Coltrane had three distinct periods. He had those all of those records that he did for uh, Bob Weinstock at oh boy, Prestige.
Oh
hundreds
yeah,
hundreds of tunes, hundreds of standards, hundreds of playing with different people in different tempos. And that was a whole period of his learning about harmony and music and all of that. That's when he started recording and playing with Miles with those Prestige things. Then he had the second period of time. His second chapter was Atlantic, and that was the Giant Steps period. That was when he was reharmonizing everything and dealing with these sequences and thirds and minor thirds and different patterns, dealing with his concept of harmony that he was working on. You know, and then after that, he went to Impulse with Bob Thiel. And when he went to Impulse with Bob Thiel, that's when his playing began to expand harmonically as far as opening up in a creative way with the scales and the moods and the feelings and the freedom in the music. But most people don't realize that as far out as he got, there was always form in what he played. And if you listen to him play, and some of these amazing free things that he played, you can still hear the patterns of giant steps in there. You can still hear all of the discipline that he learned. So that's why I tell people it's like Coltrane was freedom through discipline, right? Incredible discipline. He studied and he worked on his music till it just got to the point where he was so free and so open in it, he could play anything because it was grounded in all of those years of studying harmony, all of those records that he did for Prestige, all of that giant step stuff and the reharmonization of things and on Atlantic Records. And by the time he got to Impulse and he started playing free music, it was still freedom in relationship to an incredible discipline. So his music always had form. His music always had some kind of compositional form. What happened after Coltrane, he became the father, or whatever you want to call it, of free jazz, the free jazz movement, right? And a whole lot of younger players got into that without having the background. And so it was chaotic. It was a mess because they were just making sounds on their instruments. Coltrane was making sounds on his instruments that were related to years of study and practice. And so that's how he evolved. You know, his whole thing evolved through incredible discipline.
Yeah.
Incredible discipline.
Yeah. So let's go back to you. It's lovely to talk to you about, to hear from such an experienced sax player as you are about where you come from what you have learned from obviously studying the music of Coltrane and listening to it and understanding it. So when you have played, obviously you've played with, everybody, the Rolling Stones and Frank Zappa and everybody. How do you approach that so that you enter their world?
You involve yourself in the genuineness of what they do. Zappa was very, very well versed in music and composition, and he came from a particular place harmonically and intervallically. And so when you hear that, when you play with a person like that and you hear that, you relate to that. With the Stones, with Keith and Mick and Charlie and everybody, they were totally and thoroughly involved in their music, which came out of the blues, a lot of it came out of Chicago blues, Willie Dixon, people like that. So when you hear that music, you relate to that, you become that. There's a thing about being a musician. After you study and you listen and you play, when you hear music, I was a session player. I would go into a studio and listen to a track and play. When you hear music, the music tells you what to play. If you listen to what your place is in that music and you listen to the style of the music, then you know what you should do because it tells you, it speaks to you. So you contribute to that existing feeling, that existing mood. And that's why I was as flexible as I was. It was a combination of that, really listening, really dealing with everybody's music on a genuine level, and the combination of studying, listening to Coltrane, studying harmony, listening to Eric Dolphy, Ornette Coleman, Cannonball Adderley, Oliver Nelson, all of these people. When I was 14 years old, I would go to sleep at night listening to these people, listening to Coltrane play, impressions from the live at the Village Vanguard and all that stuff when I was 14 years old. That's the way I grew up. That's all I listened to. I was like 21 years old before I started listening to anybody else besides Coltrane and Bird and all of those people. That was the saxophone to me. That's all. Those are the only people I ever listened to. So for me, that's what I thought the saxophone sounded like. I was a little kid. I learned how to play the saxophone like that because that's what I heard. So then what I found out was when I got into the quote unquote quote music business, playing with different bands, playing on records, recording with all kinds of people and traveling, I was totally overqualified. I could play anything because of where I came from, because of the technical background I had and the studying I had been doing. Pretty much anything I heard, I could play. So that physically, technically on the instrument, I could do. So then it was just applying what I knew to what my situation was at the moment. But I was qualified to do that on my instrument because all I did was practice, you
Right.
know. So, and when you grow up listening to Coltrane and Eric Dolphy and Miles Benz and Joe Henderson and Wayne Shorter and all of those people, that's all you listen to. Uh, that's just what comes out because it's your mind. It's everything goes into your subconscious mind. Everything is going into your soul, and if all of these people are all that's going into your soul, that's what comes out. That's why I tell the students, when you listen to the best possible people that you can listen to all of the time, because what goes into your consciousness is what comes out, you know.
Yeah.
And listen to greatness. Listen to Keith Jarrett. Listen to Chick Corea. Chick is gone now, but he was one of the great players. Listen to great music. And if all you do is listen to great music, then you're not going to have any garbage coming out of you.
Yeah. That's very wise advice, isn't it? Yeah. Brilliant.
Study it. It's a
Yeah.
lifetime. Yeah.
Yeah. So talk to me about Flying Dolphin and how that came about.
Patricia and I decided to do that in 2004. And it was because I had been with a lot of different record companies. I had worked with a lot of different people. I was working all the time, and we wanted to create an environment where I could do the music that I really wanted to do, that I really wanted to love with people that I love, not worry about how long it should be, not worried about whether I have to have a vocalist or not worry about whether I have to have a trumpet or a trombone, or if I didn't want to, that kind of thing. And so that's why we created Flying Dolphin. It's basically an environment for me to work on the music that I love, and then share it with people, share it with the world. You know. So
Yeah.
that's what we did. So we did that in our way. And we're still
Uh,
doing that in our way.
yeah. And so Home Light,
Home Light. Hmm.
is that the latest album?
That's the latest one because let me see. I think we recorded this in 2018. And so it was done then. We were out working and in Europe and traveling. And then we were going to do another one soon, and then the pandemic happened, so we're on hold with all of that right now. But this is the most recent CD. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's the one that I've got last, which is
Correct.
great. Yeah, but I listened to Oasis, which was 10 years ago now,
Right.
and that's an
Right.
interesting album because there's something about it that sounds very 21st century, and yet there's also this sense of it being part of that continuum from the 60s, 70s, 80s.
That's
It's
right. Yeah.
yeah.
Well,
So
it's always a continuum, because I come out of all of that stuff. So it's all in me, you know. So those things all are very, very close to my heart. All of that music, great music. Great music is always great music.
yeah,
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 it's timeless.
yeah, yeah. When did you play with Buddy Rich? What years were you with Buddy?
I left the Berkeley School to work with Buddy, and I think that was like 1966, the winter of 1966. I was with Buddy 1967, most of 1968, and then I moved to Los Angeles in 1968. So about 2 years.
Right.
And yeah, and that was my first full time traveling on the road band. I've been playing with different people for years, but that was my first road band.
Right. And what did you learn from apart from possibly how to close your ears when the great man was swearing, but what else did you learn about being in the band? Because obviously you were quite young, coming, into, as you say, your first touring experience,
Right.
full time in that band. What did that give you?
Well, consistency for one thing, being on time, being responsible, uh, being really focused, and staying on the path, staying in line. Uh, Traveling is really hard, so being able to stay focused and play well when you're really tired, that kind of thing. The road is very difficult that way, and just learning about people, learning about the world. We traveled all over the world. So that was very interesting. That was a lot of fun. That was the first time I learned that most people are pretty much the same. Everybody wants to live in peace. Everybody wants to take care of their kids. Everybody wants to have a decent home. Everybody wants to have some food, you know.
Yeah, yeah,
we're all pretty much the same as human beings. Then our ideologies get in there, and it starts to get complicated.
right. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
you know but I learned a lot traveling and listening to other musicians, and it was very enlightening to me. It was good. It was a good
Yeah,
experience. Yeah.
yeah,
Patricia says, and a lot of bad jokes.
yeah. I grew up in the late 80s, well, mid 80s. I was in London a lot, working as a musician, and I because I'm also a sax player, but nowhere near in your class. And I used to go to Ronnie Scott's all the time, and his bad jokes were, legendary. And
Right.
I also had several friends who played in Buddy's band then, in the mid
Right.
80s.
Right.
And, they used to tell some of the jokes that he told, and,
Well, he grew up in Vaudeville. Buddy Rich grew up in show business. You know, his family, his mom and dad were in vaudeville, and when he was a baby, he was with them, and that's how they found out he was gifted, because they would be rehearsing for a show, and they had a pit band that was down in the pit playing the music for their show. They sat Buddy on the edge of the stage, and Buddy would be on the edge of the stage, and the band would be playing, and he started tapping on his knees, and he was playing all the music. He was making all the hits that the drummer was making for the show. He was already tuned into all of that, and his parents saw that, and they said, "Oh wow, we have an act," you know. And he was like a year and a half old, and he became baby traps the boy, baby traps the drum wonder. Yeah. Mel Torme wrote a great book about Buddy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Oh, I mean, yeah, and everything keeps coming around because you mentioned Mel Torme there, and
Right.
I recently, the last couple of years, discovered James Torme, who it comes to the UK quite a lot, I think, because his mother is still here, and
Okay.
he performs quite a lot, and that's
Son, that's
yeah,
that's Mel's son.
Mel's son, yeah, yeah,
Oh, okay. Okay.
yeah.
I didn't
So
even know that.
yeah, oh, there you are. Yeah, and so he's that was, and so I went to one of his gigs,
Uh-huh.
in I don't know if ever went to the 606 Club in London. It's a great
No.
little jazz club.
Uh-huh.
You probably wouldn't have played there, but it was definitely a kind of like after hours.
I played at Ronnie's a bunch. I played at the Jazz Cafe a bunch. I played at the Pizza Express and a couple other places there, but those are the
Right.
main places. Yeah.
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 Yeah. Yeah. We're lucky in London to have some great venues and see some,
Mhm.
hopefully we can again see some great people.
Yeah, it would be nice, huh?
Yeah. Yeah. So how has lockdown been for you?
Well, I'm a terrible man, so I'm going to say it's been great. And I'm going to tell you why.
Go on.
Because uh, this little house that Patricia and I are in, we've had it for 15 years. And this is the first period of time that we've ever been home longer than 2 weeks at a time.
Wow.
Okay, lockdown happened last March. And by the time we got to May of last year, I was finally over my jet lag. And I woke up one morning and I said, "Holy cows, I'm not tired anymore." You know, when you travel all the time and you work all the time, you're always tired. And you have 2 weeks off and you spend half of it just lying down, you know. So that way it's been good. I've gotten a whole bunch of stuff done around our little house. That's really good. Lots of yard work because usually, we'd go out and come home and we'd have 2 weeks at the house, and I'd run around with the lawnmower and I'd try to make sure that stuff wasn't falling down, and get the you know we have my accountant. She would go to the PO box and pick up the mail, all of our business mail. Then she would email us on the road, and she'd tell us what the bills were, right? And then we
Right.
take care of the bookkeeping from the road. But when I got home, I'd go by my accountant's place and there'd be 2 tax boxes full of bills, right? So I had to take all of those. They were paid, but they had to be filed. They had to be documented, all of that stuff. So
Oh,
that was our life. We go crazy on the road. We'd be tired. Then we come home and we'd be crazy trying to play catch up. So it's been uh it's been kind of peaceful, and I'm really enjoying that. I've been practicing a lot. practicing more and more and working on different things. I'm actually getting my flute chops back together, and I'm actually getting my clarinet chops back together because I hadn't been playing those, because I've been out on the road, since I stopped doing studio work. So basically for me, it's been a very positive experience. However, no work.
Well,
You know,
yeah.
yeah, just
Yeah.
doing live streams and doing a couple of Skype lessons, not a lot, and doing virtual concerts and those kind of things, and that's been the work. I think we're taking our first trip since the COVID thing. We're going to Denver next week. We're going on the train. We love to take the train.
Oh, yeah.
The train we really like. So we're going to go from LA to Denver on our favorite train, which is called the Zephyr. It goes through the high Sierras, and then it goes through part of the Rockies too. So it's really, really, really lovely. And that's the first time we're going to be going out in a year. almost exactly a year, because it was like March the 12th here. 13th. March the 13th here was a lockdown. That was the last year. And I was on the road with my friend Corky Siegel. Patricia and I were out with Corky Siegel, and we were traveling on the East Coast. And our last gig was in Florida, and we had one more to do in Wisconsin, and it just got canceled. But it was amazing for us because we were on a tour of the East and the South, and we went to the Virgin Islands, and we played, and it was like every concert we did was the venue's last concert. It was like we were running in front of this tidal wave, we're going,
Wow.
we
Yeah.
can do we'll do this concert, and then we do another concert, and they close the venue after us. We'd be the last gig. So we were in Florida, and we did the last gig at that venue. We were supposed to come back to Chicago. We flew back to Chicago, and then that's when everything stopped.
Right.
So we didn't
Yeah.
get to go to Minneapolis. And then we waited for our train, and we went back to LA on the train, and we got to LA, and it was over.
And a year later, you're going to take a train out.
Yeah, and a year later, we're taking the train to Denver.
Oh, Denver's lovely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
like it.
I
So,
bet that's a great train ride, actually. I've driven it, but I've never gone on the train that way.
you go from the Bay Area. You take one train. It's called the Starlight from LA to Emeryville, California, which is up near Oakland.
Oh,
And
yeah.
then you take the Zephyr from Emeryville east across that way to Denver. So it's two trains. Yeah.
Lovely. Very good.
So
Yeah. And so what have you got planned? Have you got gigs penciled in yet? I mean, how far are we down that road?
probably April. We have some things that we're starting back in April. I work a lot with Diane Shore, and she doesn't think she's going to be doing anything until maybe next year. She wants to take some time. But as soon as it's safe, we'll start. And I think it'll be slow, because right now we're doing live streams. We're going to Denver, but it's a live stream. We're going to go. We'll play in the club, and there'll be 10 people in the club, and then they sell the tickets online, and then we do an online concert. That's what we've been doing. we had some friends in Boulder. We have a friend in Boulder that started doing some concerts and drive-ins. They're doing concerts and drive-in movies because it's open air. People park and sit in and stay in their car. And then when they like the composition and the composition is over, they blow their horns. Instead of applauding, they go honk, 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 you know.
Oh, so, fantastic.
But they were doing that, and they started doing that before it got cold last fall. So they'll probably start that up. You know, people are very resilient. People are very creative. So there'll be a way. It's gonna come. It'll come out. It'll all work out.
Yeah.
I'm supposed to go to Germany in April to do a concert there. A concert that I was supposed to do in Germany last April. They rearranged it and they're going to do it this April. They hope.
Right.
So we don't know, you know, because everybody has a spike, the virus changes, all of these things are going on. So, you know, I've had my first shot. I'm supposed to have my next shot in a couple of weeks. Patricia's waiting in line to get her first shot. So we just see how it goes.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's all any of us can do. Just wait and see.
Right. And stay calm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Keep calm and keep
Absolutely. Oh, fantastic. Well, I am absolutely going to come to one of your gigs in the next couple of years, whenever I can. Whether if I have to come to Germany, I'll come to Germany. I love Germany, so you know. Yeah. And I'm so grateful. Our mutual friend Peter Manning Robinson.
Sure.
I'm so grateful that he put us in touch because it was a fantastic interview when I spoke to him, and then when he mentioned you, I was like, brilliant.
Yeah, we've been friends since he was a kid. You know, we played music forever. When I left Buddy Rich's bands, he's one of the first people that I played with when I moved to LA.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And when you get the next album out, we'll do this again and we'll talk about the new stuff.
Sure, that would be good. Good. I would really appreciate that. That would be a lot of fun. And let's just keep in touch. You know, if you want to do another talk sometime or anything, just let us know, and we'll keep in touch.
It was such a pleasure to interview Ernie, and you may have heard his wife Patricia in the background from time to time prompting him on things that he'd forgotten. So thank you for listening to this episode of Harmonious World. I hope you enjoyed it. Please do subscribe and listen to any of the other episodes. I've interviewed some amazing people. I've been so lucky. But once again, thank you for joining me on this episode. And I'm going to sign off with the title track of Ernie Watts' latest album, Home Light. Thank you for listening to the latest episode of Harmonious World. My name is Hilary Seabrook, and it's a great delight to bring this series of discussions with musicians and composers and writers and all sorts of people to you. Obviously, there's no point in having a podcast if people aren't listening, and I'm very grateful to my listeners for doing so. Thanks also to Joe English for composing and performing this new theme tune. So wherever you get your podcast, you can leave a review. You can share this with your friends and family, either as a link or on social media and that sort of thing. I'd be really grateful for that. Don't forget that you can subscribe now. There's a link wherever you get your podcasts. So have a great week, and please remember why I started this, which is just to try and make the world a little more harmonious. Thanks for listening to Harmonious World.